Ladies and gentlemen, I am the American Spy Fox, and before you even think it, let me say it. Yes, in the last video, I was wearing a Boston Celtics hat, and in this video, I'm wearing a Los Angeles Lakers hat. Los Angeles. I liked them both. Bird, Magic, Kareem, Kevin McHale, all of them. The legends. In between chapter 13 and chapter 14 is a chapter called Chapter X. I guess Michael Azerrad thought he was being cool. However, it's very, very short. I'll go ahead and bust it out. Next will be chapter 14. And then again, if you didn't watch the last video where I read chapter 13, we're going to read the last chapter in a live chat so we can discuss it in real time and talk about the whole book after I read the last chapter. As well, I will be continuing to make regular videos. I'm not just going to turn this into a reading channel. I'm going to be making videos from stories I've found in this book and stories I found in the Alice in Chains book, which I've started to read. A lot of good stuff. For patrons, there's going to be a video coming up on Patreon just for patrons. It's been a while since I've made anything just for patrons. We're going to talk about Mary Lou Lord and Dave Grohl's relationship with Kurt, couple quotes I found from Dave and Kurt about their, fragile friendship, I guess you would say, their short-term friendship. But let's just go ahead and bust this out because it's so short, it's so easy. Let's get it done. All right, let's get it. This chapter is called Chapter X. It is titled, It's Anger, It's Death, and Absolute Total Bliss. After all that's happened, it's not surprising to hear that Kurt has found that being a professional rock musician is not quite what he imagined back when he was banging out his raunchy punk rock songs all alone in his bedroom in Aberdeen. By the way, I'm already interrupting. I can't help it. Standing outside Kurt Cobain's house where he grew up, standing outside looking up at his window, surreal experience, man. If you're a diehard Nirvana fan, I hope that someday you can get out to Aberdeen and just follow this guy's footsteps. I think a lot of people think I gave up on that whole Washington trip documentary. That's not true. I'm still going to release it. There was an old AC, air conditioner, in the window. It looked very old, and I thought, my God, was that in there when Kurt was alive, when he lived there? Is that, but probably not. But I didn't think it very wise of them to leave that there. The only reason I thought that it's probably authentic is because you know how easy it would be for someone to just push the air conditioner in and then get into the house? So by my way of thinking, I'm thinking they wanted to leave this as authentic as possible. They didn't want to change a thing so they could sell it for more money. That's the only reason I was thinking maybe that was Kurt's air conditioner. That's the reason they didn't just board the window up. They left it there. Like, they had it pretty well locked up, all the windows covered. You couldn't really see into the house. Somebody's taking care of it. And of course, Wendy probably sold it. Matter of fact, I believe I read she did sell it. She was first asking for an ungodly amount of money, like millions, like $6 million. I think she ended up getting like 600,000 or something. But anyway, surreal experience. And by the way, you can walk from Kurt's doorstep. You can walk to the Yonge Street Bridge in a matter of minutes. The bridge, he supposedly slept under, definitely hung out under. And I have some pictures from his neighborhood. I'm not sure anyone's ever done that. Lots of people have went there, taken pictures of themselves in front of the house. I don't think anybody's ever taken pictures of the neighborhood. And basically what would Kurt Cobain see when he walks out his door, right? That's something that I want to share with you guys. Look at me already getting off topic. It's become a job, whether I like it or not, he says. It's something that I love doing and would always want to do, but I have to be honest, I don't enjoy it nearly as much as I used to when I was practicing every night, imagining what it would be like. It's nothing like what it was like the first couple of years, actually playing in front of a few people, loading up the van, and going to a rock show to actually play. The privilege of that just cannot be reproduced after doing it for 10 years. The same feeling is not there. I'm surprised to get as excited about it as I do still, he continues. Sometimes I'm just blown away that I can enjoy it as much, page turn, as I do when we have a really good show. I'm feeling really good and loose, and it really doesn't matter if the crowd is into it or not. I don't judge it by that at all because usually the crowd is the same wherever we go. It has to do with my mood. If I feel relaxed and I really want to play, it would be that time of day when I would have wanted to play if I didn't have to play a show. Then it usually goes really well and I appreciate it a lot. What goes through Kurt's mind as he performs on stage? It's just a mixture of every emotion that I've ever experienced, he says. It's anger, it's death, and absolute total bliss. There's that word, right? That first band, or one of the first band names, right? Bliss. I think they played one or two shows as Bliss. It's anger, it's death. It's absolute total bliss. As happy as I've ever been when I was a carefree child running around throwing rocks at cops. I had this old guy that owns the property that Kurt's grandpa lived on and now his uncle lives. I had a very long conversation with him and he told me some short anecdotes about Kurt when he was little, running around in this little retirement park visiting his grandparents. He said that he sat and watched Kurt one day take a ball, like a kickball, a playground ball, and he was just kicking it straight up in the air. And after a while, he realized what Kurt was trying to do. He was trying to hit the electric lines with the ball. And he said once Kurt got it right, got his aim correct, and it hit the wire and nothing happened, he went inside. Like he had, it's kind of interesting. You know, here's a little like probably 9, 10, 11-year-old Kurt Cobain, and he just wants to see if he can kick the ball and hit the wire. And if it does hit that electrical wire, what is it going to do? Once he does it, he's satisfied. He goes back into grandma. I thought that was a really interesting little story that this old man talked to me. Really nice old man. His caretaker, Judy, was cool too. So all the wailing and flailing and intense distorted volume are not quite what they seem. People see energy like that and screaming. People see it as a negative release, like we've got to get it out of us or we're going to kill somebody, Dave says. But I'm happy when I play music, this music. It makes me really happy. Maybe when I was 13 or 14, I was mad at Springfield, Virginia, and things just rubbed me the wrong way. It's just fun to make noise, and the bigger the noise, the funner it is. More fun it is. So the more noise you've got going, the better you feel. The only times Kurt feels real anger on stage is when the monitors aren't working well. I think we've all seen what he did to the PA system in Texas when the bouncer attacked him, right? And he hit the bouncer in the head with his guitar, which often precipitates instrument smashing or abrupt stage exits. Yep. If I can't hear myself, I cannot have a good show, he says. I can't fake it. I feel like a fool. The audience doesn't deserve to be witnessing this when I can't hear myself because I'm not giving it 100%. I can't stand there and pretend I'm having a good time when I'm not. So I feel like I'm cheating the audience when that happens. Nowadays, the band can demand and receive whatever they want in terms of sound equipment. Despite what he said before, Kurt is very aware of the vibe from the audience. A lot of times I'll be going through the motions and I'll look up at the audience and realize that they're really enjoying themselves, and that makes me happy. It's quite a sight to see that many people pogoing at once. Definitely one of the only things that our band has introduced to rock and roll is gathering that many people in one place to pogo. There's a reason the band has lasted through all the trials and tribulations, and at the very core of it is the solid relationship between Kurt and Krist. Just as it's tempting to fit Kurt and Courtney's relationship into a stereotypical framework, the same could be said for Kurt and Krist. To be sure, there are elements of Mutt and Jeff, the short, high-strung one and the big, steady sidekick. Krist usually is more level-headed about business decisions. It's Krist who calms Kurt down when he gets flustered by anything from a belligerent bouncer to a lousy monitor mix. But they complement each other perfectly. Sometimes Kurt will be quiet and Krist will be loud. Other times Kurt will be loud and Krist will be the one trying to keep things in control, says Tracy Morander. It's almost yin and yang in a way. We've always had enough respect for each other to figure out what irks one another beforehand, what little personality defect that bothers each other, and try to stop them before it turns into a fight, Kurt says. We've never spoken mean words to each other. It's really weird. It's not because we love each other so much. We both think of each other as hypocrites, and there are things about each other that I'm sure we despise. But there's no point. We just have this common knowledge that there's no point in fighting with one another because for the sake of the band, it's an irrelevant thing. The one complaint Kurt has about Krist is that Krist's sense of humor drowns his out. He's really a funny person, Kurt allows. He's real clever in an almost inane way. The things that he says are just so asinine at times that they're hilarious. They make me laugh. But I feel like he restrains me from joining in on this sense of humor and actually contributing to it. I'm allowed to laugh at things that he says, but for some reason, I'm not allowed to be funny on the same level as he is. Then again, with Kurt getting so much of the attention, it's only fair that Krist grabs some of the limelight with his easy sense of humor. Yeah, Kurt says, but it sucks to have to be around somebody where you can't be yourself 100%. When me and Dave are together and Krist isn't around, it's totally hilarious. We're just playing off one another and it's really fun and I enjoy it. But when all three of us get together, Krist is in the middle and Dave and I are on the side. I take all the serious questions and Krist makes all the smarmy comments and funny things. And Dave is in the middle of both of us. You don't know where he stands. But of course, Kurt is usually too shy to be funny around large groups of people. Everybody knows if Kurt smiles, it lights up the effing room. Because he usually doesn't, says Dave. I don't know if he's really unhappy or if he's always been unhappy or if he just doesn't know how to be happy. When we'd shoot BB guns in the backyard or throw rocks at cars from the roof of the house or shoot out the windows at the lottery building with a BB gun, when we were trying to quit smoking and we had nothing better to do, you'd see the laughing, funny, ha 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 Kurt come into play, which a lot of people don't see. Most people have never seen that side of Kurt, except in the In Bloom video, perhaps a few choice scenes in 1991, the year that punk broke. A lot of people think he's always the quieter, bitter, angry, confused little pixie, but he's not, Dave says. I don't even know him that well, and I know that much. Kurt isn't the only one who's felt overwhelmed. For the first year of me being in the band, there was just no reason at all for me to be at interviews, Dave says. Krist is really politically motivated and really bright. He has a lot to say, even though he sometimes gets spasms of the brain and can't spit out what he means to say. He really was the king of the interview, and Kurt always had the beyond clever snaps of wit, and I was like a paperweight. Although Dave is much more socially integral to the band than any other drummer has ever been, Nirvana is still not exactly the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. Krist and Kurt are unlike any people I've ever met before, Dave says. They're hard to understand and they're hard to really feel like you're getting along with them, like you can really sit down and talk to them. Some people you can hit it off with immediately and you can talk about anything. With Krist and Kurt, I always felt so different from them. They'd known each other for a long time and sort of had the same sense of humor. Only recently, and this is just barely, did I feel like I really know them more and really felt like I was in the band. I don't feel like the new guy anymore, but I don't really know if I feel vital to the band, Dave continues. You're joining a band that's had 5 drummers before. You might as well be on an hourly wage. It was kind of strange, and it still is too, Dave says. It's weird because I've always felt expendable. If they were tired of me being in the band, they could always find another drummer. So I've always had that in the back of my mind. It's understandable. I don't think that drums in the band are of such importance that one person's style would really make a difference. A drummer like Dale Crover, you can tell when Dale is playing in Nirvana because he's the best drummer in the world. I've always thought if things didn't work out, they could always go to Dale. They could always get Dale. Unless you're a Melvins fan, you don't know how good Dale Crover is. And for a long time, I wasn't a Melvins fan. I even made a video that a lot of people didn't like, talking about how I thought Dale and Buzz were a little jealous of their friend Kurt's success, which you can be friends with somebody and be jealous at the same time, right? But I've listened to a lot of Crover since I made that video, and I've definitely changed my mind. That dude is a beast. There's a little bit of Crover on Incesticide as well. It's not an apocalyptic thing, but I've never had a feeling of real security. Playing with Krist and Kurt is really great, and we really do have something that nobody else has, and I realize that, Dave says. Oh, yeah, by the way, I wanted to say, I think Crover was so loyal to Osborne, to Buzz, I don't believe he would have left the Melvins, even though Nirvana was super successful and they were, they were the bee's knees, right? They were the it thing. Somehow Nirvana caught that early zeitgeist in the early 90s. I think Dale was much too, I think he would have helped them out for a period of time, but I don't think he would have left the Melvins for them because that's his baby too, right? When I say that they could get any other drummer, it's true, but there is a chemistry between the three of us. I hate flattering myself by saying that the band wouldn't be the same without me, but deep down, I know it's true. It would be different. Sure, someone else could play the stuff that I'm playing, and someone could play as hard as I play. Anybody could do what I do. It's no big deal. But there is a chemistry that clicks sometimes. I would agree with that. With Krist and Kurt, there's never really any reassurance, Dave says. It's never like, wow, that was great. It's like, you just do it. On the other hand, he feels that part of the magic of their collaboration lies precisely in the fact that they don't communicate with each other very well. No one really says anything, he says, so when we write a song, the arrangement just falls together. It's not so conscious. We don't decide we need a bridge here. It just sort of happens. Organically, the best way. Just jam until you're like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that again. That was how my first band was. I missed that band. Success has driven the three apart to a certain extent. We get along well, the three of us, and at times it was sort of palsy-walsy, but never too much, Dave says. Kurt and I used to spend every minute of the day with each other. We became really close as we could get, I suppose, when we lived in Olympia. Then after that, we kind of got distant again. Things get crazy and you kind of want to get away from it all. What's it like to be famous? ? So Michael Azerrad has asked Dave, what is it like to be famous? The only thing I can think of is paranoia. It makes you feel like someone's watching you. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Kurt. He switched from Dave back to Kurt. So Azerrad asked Kurt, what's it like to be famous? Kurt says paranoia. It makes you feel like someone's watching you. It really isn't as hard as I thought it would be, or as hard as it seemed like it was at first. I used to resent people for recognizing me. I'd blame them. Don't fucking look at me. What the hell are you looking at? You can't blame them for looking, but it is annoying. Yet for all his outspoken abhorrence of fame, Kurt now wants to have another crack at it. It's not that I like it anymore. It's just that I'm getting familiar with it, he says. I know how to react when people stare at me. I don't feel quite as paranoid as I did. I could probably learn to live with being famous. It doesn't mean that I've given in and I actually enjoy it. I just have a better attitude toward it than I did before. Although Krist and Dave do it all the time, going out in public is a somewhat different proposition for Kurt. Because he is the front man, because he is reclusive, because of the drugs, and because of the formidable mystique around his music, a Kurt spotting, even in Seattle, is the talk of the town. He's learning how to deal with getting ogled. Most of the time, I'll smile and let them know that I understand that they recognize me because I'd do the same thing if I recognized a star, Kurt says. If they keep staring and they're being obnoxious, or if they snicker or something like that, I give them a dirty look or ask them what their problem is or confront them about it. Lots of times, people have just laughed in my face when they recognize me. I couldn't believe it. I can understand it now, like a sarcastic thing. Look at that fucking idiot. It's him. Ha ha. Those are the people that I really like to deal with because I'll walk right up to them and start drilling them with questions. Like, what's their problem? They're just amazed because they think of me as someone who wouldn't confront them. And when I do, they clam up and turn beet red and run away sometimes. People expect celebrities to brim with a constant supply of good cheer, something that Kurt rarely seems to do. It can make for some awkward situations. Most people think if I look at them and I don't smile, that I'm pissed off. So I go out of my way to make it look like I'm enjoying myself, Kurt says. I usually am enjoying myself. I'm hardly ever depressed anymore, so it's a lot easier to be able to do that. Kurt also has to fight another perception. Rock stars just aren't supposed to have chronic health problems. Many believe that Kurt's stomach problem was merely a quote-unquote stomach problem, a euphemism for a heroin habit, and occasionally it was, but he really does have intense chronic stomach pain. I've seen it. I've been there, says Krist. I've been there when he's had his major episodes, and it's terrible because there's nothing you can do. Kurt has seen countless specialists for his stomach, 9 in the first part of 1993 alone, who remain baffled as to what his problem might be. Ulcers have been ruled out. The latest theory is that a kink in Kurt's spine due to his scoliosis is pinching a nerve which leads to his stomach. Oh, God. Besides opiate-derived, I'm not even going to lie, I don't even know that word, the only effective cure Kurt has found is performing on stage when a massive endorphin rush kills the pain. If you didn't know that, Kurt did have scoliosis. If you see any pictures of him from the side, he has sort of a hunchback. He used to call himself the Rat because he was so skinny and his back was hunched over. I think a lot of the times, he was obviously very conscious about his body. He'd wear several layers of clothing because he felt he looked so skinny, he was unhealthy. Tracy Miranda talks about that. Yeah, he definitely did have spine issues. I wonder, man. Heroin was one way of killing the pain, although Kurt subsequently found a legal and relatively safe remedy for his condition. Buprenex, a mild synthetic opiate which he injected directly into his stomach during an attack. Often he would go a week without resorting to the drug, but when he did something stressful like playing a show or shooting a video, he'd do it several times a day. Recently, a doctor diagnosed his stomach pain as a result of a pinched nerve in his spine. Wow. So it really was. Maybe he just needed to see a chiropractor, huh? Brought on by his scoliosis, the physical therapy he's getting for his back seems to be working, and Kurt says he's glad that he isn't dependent on a chemical for his well-being anymore. Nowadays, he eats better food and even does push-ups and sit-ups before going to bed. He actually looks forward to touring again. How did I miss this? How did the whole world miss this? There are videos online about Kurt Cobain's stomach problem. Was it real? Was it not? Hell, myself, I have a video talking about it. Apparently, they figured it out. It was a pinched nerve. And I don't know if you've ever had a pinched nerve. I have. My whole arm used to go numb and tingle and be heavy. Went to a chiropractor. I had a pinched nerve in one of the 4 vertebrae in your neck. And that's what was causing it. I mean, it even says the physical therapy he's getting for his back seems to be working. Courtney Love has never mentioned this. She's been in interviews talking about his severe pain and how he never got rid of it, and it was part of the reason that drove him to do what he did. She's never mentioned he had a pinched nerve, that he was going through physical therapy. Another stumbling block for Kurt is the public's perception that he is a frail, passive person who has little idea what he is doing. In addition to everything else, he is a literal genius about what it is to be a rock star, or a rock artist, says Golden Mountain's Danny Goldberg. It's not something that he has not thought about. Goldberg tells a story about Kurt at the MTV taping back in January 92, while he and Courtney were binging on heroin. Kurt's just wiped out and he looks terrible, and he says, "I want to see it back," he recalls. So they play back about 15 different takes of 4 or 5 different songs. He just sat there and said, "That's no good. That one's no good. That one you can put in the Year in Rock, but I don't want it on regularly. That one is the one you put on 120 minutes. After a week, I only want this one repeated." He could barely walk across the room, but they were all exactly the right decisions, and it was not like anyone else's opinion mattered. When it comes to the professional product of what Nirvana is, he makes all of those decisions, and he makes them from a place of tremendous consciousness. Kurt is also savvy about publicity. Everybody who was anybody was backstage at the 91 Rock for Choice benefit in LA. Perry Farrell was there. Even Axl Rose was there. In a crowded hallway, Kurt mentioned to Danny Goldberg that journalists had been asking the band a lot of political questions and missing the band's sense of humor. Kurt had figured out that they were being prompted by a specific paragraph in the band's bio and asked Goldberg if it could be removed. Goldberg was very impressed. "I've never had an artist or a manager or a publicist pick up within a month the effect of a bio on the types of questions being asked and then figure out how to edit it to skew it slightly differently," he says. marveling. Goldberg likens Kurt's savvy to John Lennon's, recalling a celebrated 1970 Rolling Stone interview with Lennon in which he revealed things like the fact that the Beatles always took care not to release a record at the same time as the Stones. At the time, fans were shocked by such conscious manipulation, but, as Goldberg says, you don't become the Beatles by accident, and you don't become Nirvana by accident either. The John Lennon comparisons trouble the Cobains, if only because of what that makes Courtney. She once greeted a visitor to the Cobains' hotel room by saying, "Okay, you want to see Yoko Ono? Here goes." Whereupon she proceeded to pick up the phone, call Gold Mountain on Nirvana business, and positively flip out on whatever hapless person was on the other end of the line. Sometimes Kurt just doesn't feel like saying stuff, so he has her say it for him, says Goldberg. When Courtney does that, it's because he has asked her to do it. It's a terrible mistake if anyone ever thinks that she does things on her own. Sometimes he would just rather not talk, so he'll have her call. But the idea that she could make him do anything that he doesn't want to do is just so absurd. You can't get this guy to drink a glass of water or walk across a room to turn over a cassette or do anything he doesn't want to do. He is one of the most willful people I've ever met in my life. Sometimes I think he'll just ask her to be the bad guy. Many wonder why Courtney should be involved in her husband's business affairs at all. Because I'm too lazy to deal with it, Kurt replies. I'll just bend over and help them slip it in my... I forgot about things all the time and everyone takes advantage of that. If it wasn't for Courtney going out of her way to just take care of things without even asking me questions... Sometimes, not questions, without asking me sometimes. So Danny Goldberg just said she never does anything unless Kurt tells her to. And then Kurt says sometimes she does it on her own without asking. Obviously, I would allow her to do it anyway. It's mainly for the benefit of our baby so we can make sure we have some money in the next 10 years. So Courtney was obviously very concerned about their financial situation and took control of it. I'm just too lazy. I decided a couple years ago that I wasn't going to deal with the business side of it. Now I have to. I'm getting better at it. I'm learning from her. I should just hire an accountant, dude. Hire a financial advisor. Goldberg cites his experience as a publicist with Led Zeppelin. Although Jimmy Page was a quiet man, he ran Led Zeppelin with an iron fist. It just wasn't his fist. When he didn't like something that was going on, he'd just mention it to manager Peter Grant, and Grant would do whatever yelling was necessary. I'm not saying that Courtney has got the same relationship that Peter had to Jimmy, Goldberg says. I'm just saying that people who are quiet are not necessarily passive. Often, Courtney is simply looking out for the man who is her husband. If they're out on tour and he's got a terrible stomach and there's a certain kind of food that doesn't give him stomach aches and they go into a dressing room somewhere and that food's not there and he's going to be doubled over in pain, she does make a big scene, Goldberg says, but she has nothing to do with things like who's producing the record or what the songs are or whether they tour or don't tour. Honestly, she's not very involved, Goldberg continues. She's just very visible. You can't miss her when she's in a room. She's loud and she's forceful and she's flamboyant. She's a brat is what she is, a spoiled little brat that never had to grow up and get a real job. Everybody did the work for her. By the way, if you don't know this, Courtney's mom was adopted, right? The biological mother was iconic author Paula Fox. It's rumored that Marlon Brando is probably Courtney's grandfather, although it was never proven. Johnson & Johnson, you probably remember them from all the vaccines they were passing out to people during the pandemic. Courtney's family owns major shares with Johnson & Johnson. So she wasn't rich before she met Kurt because they sort of shunned her from the family for just being herself. But her family's definitely rich and trust fund, all that. Even Kurt admits his wife can sometimes be a social liability. She'll confront people even when there's no point in confronting them, Kurt says. There'll be someone who's obviously a sexist jerk, but you have to be around this person because you're working with them at this time. There's really no penetrating this person. You know they're a lost cause, but she'll go out of her way to confront him and make a bad scene in front of all these people just to let him know. Don't fucking bullshit me at all. She didn't make a dent in this person at all. But still, it's her duty to do things like that. Even though it doesn't make anything better, it still needs to be done. I'll just leave the person alone. That's the difference between her and me. She is definitely a fighter. Alright, I think we got 2 more pages. Naturally, Courtney makes for a formidable business adversary. I will ask my management to do something for me 20 times, Kurt says, and finally Courtney calls up and screams at them, and it finally sticks in their brain. They get off the phone and they go, "What a cunt." But the thing gets done. Of course, the question is, at what cost? Courtney is extremely intelligent and does not suffer fools gladly. The slightest misstep, even in the most casual of conversations, is often rewarded with a withering comment or worse. But Kurt is no fool either. He readily acknowledges that his wife's brusque personal style hurts far more often than it helps. She's totally abusive to people and she doesn't even realize it. She's so used to talking that way, Kurt says. And a lot of times she unnecessarily jumps to conclusions. And that's her downfall. That's why she doesn't get taken seriously. Even he admits they fight nearly every day. Oh, God. Could you imagine being in a relationship, married to someone with a kid where you just fight every day? Once in a blue moon, okay, yeah, sure, but every day? No wonder this guy was miserable. It's been said that if Courtney were a man, her extreme forwardness and caustic manner wouldn't earn her any flack at all. That's BS. People don't like men like that either. But even Kurt agrees she'd get it no matter what sex she was. I remind her of that almost every day, he says with a sly chuckle. Their latest spat probably still fresh in his mind. She admits it and she tries really hard. But there's this chemical in her mind that just won't allow her to think before she freaks out on people. A lot of times, someone deserves it though. Yeah, that chemical is called sociopath. It's an interesting situation for such a sensitive person as Kurt. Well, I'm not as sensitive as most people probably think, he says defensively. There are so many positive qualities about her that it doesn't even matter. She's already getting a lot better at it. It just takes people a long time to change their ways. It's the only character flaw she has is that she jumps the gun too fast. Although tension still flares between Courtney and the other members of the band, things are definitely looking up. Many say Courtney has been changing for the better, especially after Francis was born. She has definitely become a person who admits she's wrong, Kurt says. It usually takes 2 or 3 examples before she will admit it. But she does. She isn't that pig-headed. The Courtney factor still dogs the band. The idea persists that Courtney controls Kurt, that she is sapping his talent, that she will break up the band. Call it the Delilah complex. But she simply is not the monster that much of her recent press has painted her to be. I think Azarad's just trying to appease Kurt because here's the band, right? And probably their girlfriends, Shelly, Jennifer, whichever Jennifer Dave was with that year. People who are with him all the time, who tour with him, who know him well, saying like Courtney's controlling him. And I think what they meant by sapping his talent is he's writing songs for Hole, right? And then Azarad says, but she simply is not the monster that much of her recent press has painted her to be. Well, how do you know that, Michael Azarad? I understand that he had many conversations with Kurt by telephone. I think he went to a couple of their shows, followed them on tour for a couple weeks. But to really get to know somebody, you have to know them, right? Like be around them a lot. I think that was him just appeasing Kurt. Like, I'm going to say she's better and she's not as bad as the rest of the bandmates say, blah, blah, blah. Don't believe everything you read. But thanks to the ripple effect of the Vanity Fair profile, it has become increasingly difficult to portray Courtney Love as anything but a horror, without seeming to be a stooge or a liar. And while Courtney isn't above reproach, it's obvious that there's a considerable sexist force behind the attacks on her character. Kurt is hardly optimistic about the future. No matter what we do or how clean we live our lives, we're not going to survive this because there are too many enemies and we threaten too many people, he says. Everyone wants to see us die. We might just keep going just to spite those F-heads. They've already treaded past the most offensive part, which is attacking my family. And that could go on for years. But there's going to be a time when I'm not going to be able to deal with it anymore. When my daughter is old enough to realize what's going on. She's already going to be 12 years old and start reading all this old press and ask, hey, did you really take drugs when I was a baby? It's going to be a hard thing to convince her of all the things that aren't true. There's some amazing things that have happened that I'm so blessed with. But there are so many damaging things at the same time. Kurt says I should be completely rehabilitated as far as my bad attitude at this point. If everything had gone fine, I would be so much of a happier person. My humor would have started to come out more. I used to be a pretty funny person, always going out of my way to look on the funnier side of life, but I've withdrawn back into a bad attitude. I'm sure it will just be a matter of time because the positive things, the baby and the wife, are so great. They're so etched in my life as being positive things that I'm blessed with and grateful for, that if people just keep their fucking mouths shut and stop the accusations, in a couple of years, I'll be okay. But I just don't see it ending. Just yesterday, another effing article came out. Dave is more than happy to be the least visible member of Nirvana. He doesn't even want to do interviews anymore. One, he says, because I'm too lazy, and two, because why does everyone want to know what I have to say? What's the big deal? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. I play drums and that's about it. I'll put my face on the record and go home at night and clean the house. I just want to lead a normal life. I don't want to be the drummer of Nirvana for the rest of my life, so I lay low. Dave Grohl never laid low. That's a complete lie. He wanted to be the front man. He wanted to be famous, and he did it too, right? It's such a blessing to play in the band and see and do everything that we've done and not pay the price that a lot of people have to pay, says Dave. I take pride in leading the most simple life of anybody in the band because I don't do much other than be happy. There's so much that goes on with Kurt and Courtney that I can't even keep up. All right, ladies and gents, well, that was Chapter X, the chapter in between 13 and 14. Next, we'll do 14. Then, like I said, we'll read the last chapter on a live chat. We can discuss it and the whole book, really, in real time. Again, if you're new to the channel, I do way more videos than just reading. This is just something I started probably around the time my channel started. I think I've been reading this book for a long time. And yes, I just want new subscribers to know there will be like fully edited, story, narrative driven videos. This reading thing will be over soon. We're going to bust it out. Then I can get back to making stories about the history of Nirvana. And as I said, more on Alice in Chains and Lane Staley to come. If you like what you saw, leave me a like. If you think you might watch another, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.